They call me the golden boy of American neuroscience, the prodigy, the youngest lab director in the history of the Callaway Institute for Cognitive Research, a man whose name gets whispered in grant committee meetings the way people whisper about eclipses and Mercury retrogrades. They say I have a mind like a scalpel and a work ethic like a Roman legion. They say I was built in a lab, engineered from birth to win a Nobel Prize before I turned 40. Okay, wow. No. Let's stop right there, because that entire paragraph is a lie so tall it needs its own zoning permit. I'm literally just a guy, a regular, mildly anxious guy who, exactly 11 months ago, cried in a supply closet because a lab mouse named Gary bit me, and I took it personally. I do not have a mind like a scalpel. I have a mind like a browser with 47 tabs open, at least 12 of which are just my mother's voice saying, "So when's the wedding?" And the only reason I currently have a doctorate, a 6-figure grant, and a family name that makes maitre d's suddenly find us a table, is because two extremely rich, extremely controlling people spent 29 years building me like a Build-A-Bear of academic achievement, and I never once said no. Until a guy in a hoodie showed up and ruined my entire 5-year plan by being unreasonably, catastrophically cute about a farming video game. His name is Milo, and before I tell you how a Harvard-adjacent neuroscientist ends up sobbing into a beanbag chair over a cartoon goat, I need you to understand what my life looked like the day before I met him, because, reader, viewer, whoever is out there, you need the full tragic backstory to appreciate how completely gloriously my life was about to fall apart. So, let's rewind. It was a Thursday, a crisp, catalog photo-perfect Thursday, the kind my mother specifically requests from the universe for events she's already planned down to the seating chart. I came home from the lab to find my childhood dining room transformed into what I can only describe as a hostage negotiation with better lighting. White tablecloth. Actual candelabras. My father, Richard Callaway, Dr. Richard Callaway, if you value your kneecaps, at the head of the table like he was about to deliver a TED talk on disappointment. And across from me, in a chair specifically angled toward mine, sat Dr. Naomi Park. I need you to picture perfection for a second. Not attractive, I mean perfection, the kind that makes you feel underdressed in your own house. Naomi Park has published more papers by 31 than most professors publish in a career. She once corrected a Nobel laureate's math live at a conference, and he thanked her. She was wearing an outfit that cost more than my car, and she looked, somehow, bored of her own magnificence, the way a lion looks bored pacing a zoo enclosure it's clearly too powerful for. My mother, Diane, beamed at both of us like she was unveiling a merger. "Wesley," my father said, in the exact tone he uses to open a faculty meeting, "tell Naomi about the amygdala paper. Now, I need you to understand something about my father. He does not do small talk. My father has never once in his life asked, 'How was your day?' What he does instead is issue conversational homework, live in front of guests, so he can watch me perform. It's not a question. It's a quarterly earnings call disguised as dinner, so I did the amygdala paper. For 6 minutes. 6 full minutes of neurotransmitter pathways and fear-response circuitry, delivered to a woman who nodded along with polite, blazing indifference, like a hostage reading a script she'd already memorized. At one point my mother actually said, out loud, unprompted, with her hand pressed to her chest, "Don't you two just fit? We did not just fit. We fit the way 2 puzzle pieces from entirely different puzzles technically slot together if you force them. The shapes line up, sure, but you finish the picture, and there's a horse where a barn should be, and everyone's uncomfortable, and nobody wants to say it out loud, because the woman who put the puzzle together spent $400 on the frame. And then, I swear to you, on live television, in front of God and pot roast, Naomi Park's phone buzzed under the table. She glanced at it for exactly 1 second, and this entire Ivy League fortress of a woman looked. For one glorious flicker, like a kid who just found a hall pass in her locker. "I'm so sorry," she said, standing, smooth as a Bond villain excusing herself before the vault explodes. A colleague, a grant deadline, you understand? There was no colleague. I found out later there was no grant. Dr. Naomi Park faked an academic emergency to escape my mother's pot roast in under 90 minutes, and I want the record to reflect. That is a masterclass. That is Navy SEAL-level extraction. If she ever needs a reference for that skill set, I am available, I have receipts, I will testify. That left me, alone, with dessert and my parents and their 4 favorite recurring conversational hits, my career, my future, my career again, and a thrilling new addition to tonight's set list. So when's the wedding? I smiled. I said, "Sure, Mom." I finished my slice of pie like a man calmly finishing his own eulogy, and then I did what any responsible 34-year-old doctorate holder does when faced with existential dread at a formal dinner table. I excused myself to get some air, walked out the side door, and did not stop walking until I had no idea where I was, and my dress shoes had started actively betraying me on the cobblestones. That is how, 22 minutes later, cold, furious at my own cowardice, and one bad decision away from crying in public, I found the only business on the block still lit up at 10 p.m., a cramped, cluttered little gaming cafe called Respawn, wedged between a dry cleaner and a place that exclusively sold kombucha to people who wanted you to know they drank kombucha. Fairy lights strung along the ceiling like Christmas had personally given up on this location years ago. Beanbags that had clearly witnessed things. The smell of energy drinks, cinnamon for some reason, and unwashed hoodies. It smelled like every decision my parents had ever protected me from making. I walked in like a man being chased by the concept of expectations, and behind the counter, completely unbothered by the door slamming open, was a guy in headphones, muttering threats at a laptop like it had personally wronged his ancestors. "We close at 11, he said without looking up. "But if you're just here to cry quietly in a beanbag, that's also technically a service we offer." "Excuse me? I do not cry. I repress, like a functioning member of society with generational trauma and a therapist I keep cancelling on. I'm not going to cry," I said, with the calm dignity of a man who was, in fact, one bad joke away from crying. He finally looked up. "And okay, reader, I need a second here, because this is the part where my entire nervous system just quietly filed for early retirement. Messy dark hair that looked like it had never once been informed that combs exist. A hoodie with some 8-bit graphic on it I didn't understand and desperately wanted to. And this specific, unbothered, catastrophically attractive energy of a man whose biggest decision that day was microwave versus cold leftovers, who had never once in his life said the phrase, "as per my father's 5-year vision for my career," and who looked at me, a man who had just walked in wearing a blazer that costs more than his rent, like I was mildly interesting cargo that had washed up on his shore. "Cool," he said, deadpan. "First time for everyone, then." I sat down across from him. I want to be clear that my legs did this without consulting me, HR, or my own free will. He slid his laptop around so I could see the screen, a cozy little pixel art farm game, complete with a very smug-looking cartoon goat. "You look like a guy who needs to feed a digital goat and think about absolutely nothing," he said. "I have a doctorate from a very good university. People stand up when I enter rooms sometimes." "I have a doctorate," I said, which is, in hindsight, the single most pathetic sentence I have ever spoken out loud to a stranger. "Cool," he said. "The goat doesn't care. Left click to feed it." So I fed the goat. Here's the thing nobody warns you about when you've spent your whole life being the smart one. You get so good at being impressive that you completely forget how to be a person sitting in a room. And this guy, hoodie, unimpressed, absolutely goat-pilled, was not impressed by me even slightly. He didn't know my last name carried weight in 3 academic departments and 1 very tense family group chat. He just knew, within 4 minutes, that I was catastrophically, embarrassingly bad at a farming simulator. "You planted the corn in winter," he said, staring at my screen with the specific horror of a man watching a car crash in slow motion. The game never specified a season. The game has been telling you the season in the corner of the screen for 40 minutes. There's a moon icon. It's been a moon icon this whole time. I looked. There was, in fact, a small, mocking moon icon, which had apparently been informing me of impending agricultural doom the entire time. I have read functional MRI scans of the human brain, cross-referenced neural pathways under time pressure, defended a dissertation in front of 11 visibly hostile professors. I could not read a moon icon. "Okay, Dr. Corn in Winter," he said, grinning now. Actually grinning, in a way that did something deeply unfair to my chest. "What do you know how to do?" And I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the cold. Maybe it was 3 hours of my father's performance review disguised as a dinner party finally cracking something loose in my ribcage. But I told him the truth, out loud, to a total stranger, before I'd told it to a single person in my own family. Honestly? Lately? Not much. I'm extremely good at things nobody actually asked if I wanted to be good at. He went quiet for a second. Not awkward quiet. Listening quiet. Which, if you've never experienced it from someone who isn't grading you, is genuinely one of the top 5 sensations available to a human nervous system. "Huh," he said. "That's the most normal thing anyone said in here all week. Usually it's just guys screaming about ranked mode." His name, I eventually learned, was Milo Reyes. He ran Respawn, streamed under the tag Quiet Riot Dev, and had absolutely no idea, that entire first night, that the man he was roasting for planting winter corn had a lab, a legacy, and 2 parents currently at home drafting a save the date. We didn't talk about my family. He didn't ask what I did for a living, and somehow, that was the single nicest thing anyone had done for me all year, the simple, radical act of not asking me to perform anything. I stayed until Respawn closed. When he locked the door behind us, he tossed it out casual, so casual it was clearly, wonderfully, not casual at all. "So, you coming back, or was tonight a one-time goat-feeding situation?" Understand something about me. I have negotiated grant funding in front of an 11-person review board without flinching. This man asking if I was coming back to a gaming cafe nearly ended my entire nervous system on the spot. "I'll come back," I said, approximately 400% too fast. He held out his phone, small smile, definitely trying to look like this wasn't a big deal, definitely failing. "Gamer tag, in case you need backup against the goat." I typed my username into his phone, like it was the single most important data entry of my academic career. His tag was Quiet Riot Dev. Mine is, unfortunately, extremely embarrassing, and I will not be sharing it with you, this camera, or any federal investigators ever, under any circumstances. We didn't kiss. We didn't even hug. He just held the door and said, "Later, Dr. Korn," and let me walk out into the cold like a completely normal, emotionally stable man, which, reader, I promise you, I absolutely was not. I want to say, I floated home on a cloud of feelings. What actually happened is I got back at 11:47 p.m. to find my mother wide awake at the kitchen island, 2 cups of tea already poured, one clearly made 20 minutes before I even arrived, because Diane Calloway plans ambushes with the same precision NASA plans a launch window. "Where were you?" she said. Not a question, a subpoena. "Out." Naomi texted. She said you two have a wonderful academic rapport. Translation: Naomi Park, escape artist extraordinaire, threw me under the bus on her way out the door, and I want the record to reflect that I respected the strategy even as it actively ruined my morning. "We were thinking," my mother continued, sipping her tea with the calm menace of a chess grandmaster 4 moves from checkmate, "Thanksgiving, the Parks will be there, just to keep building on that rapport." And there it was. My mother had already fast-forwarded us from one dinner to recurring appearances at a national holiday like we were a sitcom she was actively pitching to a network. Meanwhile, I hadn't stopped thinking for one single second about a guy in a hoodie who thought I was bad at feeding a video game goat. "Sure, Mom," I said, smiling. I am, it turns out, both a PhD in neuroscience and a complete coward, and apparently those two things are not remotely mutually exclusive. I went back to Respawn 3 days later. I told myself it was, an interesting sociological study of casual gaming culture as a stress response mechanism. It was not. It was a crush. I was 34 years old, hiding a crush from my own internal monologue like a middle schooler passing notes to himself. Milo was there. Same hoodie energy, different hoodie. And he didn't make a single thing of me showing up, just slid a controller across the table like we'd been doing this for years. "You're late," he said. "The goat missed you. I told her you had a thing." "I had a doctor's appointment." "Is the doctor also you?" I hadn't told him yet. About the PhD, the family, the last name that makes maitre d's suddenly locate a table. It's not that I was hiding it. Exactly. Okay, it was a little that I was hiding it. I just liked, for once, being a guy whose whole personality wasn't the smart one. I liked being Wes, who's bad at farming games. That guy didn't have a 5-year plan waiting for him at home with a seating chart. "You always look like you're bracing for a test," he said, quieter now, handing me the controller, watching me a beat too long. "Even now, what's that about?" "Direct hit, absolute headshot, no scope." I laughed it off. He let me. But I noticed he noticed me, the actual me, within about a week, more than my own family had managed in a decade. That, my friends, is exactly how you know you're in serious trouble. End of episode 1. If you love this story or this story made you laugh, made your heart race, or gave you butterflies even once, do me one small favor. Hit the like button. It tells YouTube that this is a story worth sharing, and it helps more BL fans discover this little corner of the internet. And that's what keeps me going. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because I upload brand new BL stories filled with romance, comedy, drama, and plenty of heart. And if you know someone who would absolutely obsess over this story, share it with them. I'd love to know what you thought too. Who was your favorite character? What was your favorite scene? Or tell me what kind of BL story you want me to bring to life next. I read your comments, and a lot of my future stories are inspired by what you ask for. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you, Zaddies, in the next story.